and welcome to the Victorious Living Solutions podcast. I am your host, Nikeya Young, and I am so excited about the guest that we have with us today, and that is Dr. Shante. Yay! Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem. So, you guys, if you don't know who Dr. Shante is, you need to get into it. Okay. She is a mental health advocate. She is all about the same things that we're about. So, helping people to live their best lives, overcome obstacles, all of that. If you're not following her, please follow her on all her social media platforms. And I'll let her share those a little later because I will say this, I come across a lot of foolishness online and I hit my hide button a lot because I'm like, why is this in my feed? Why? But every time that Dr. Shante pops up in my feed, it is a breath of fresh air. And the Holy Spirit has directed her to say something that I needed to hear right then. And so when people are a blessing to me like that, I like to share that with my audience as well, because we're all about being victorious over here. So, welcome, Dr. Shante.
I am honored. You gave me some airtime on your show. That's always
Uh-huh.
such a tremendous privilege and opportunity. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, Nakia.
Oh, you are so welcome. So welcome. So, we're talking about today, this is season 4. And if you're new to the podcast, we're talking about thriving season. That is the theme for season 4. Now, season 3 was all about surviving toxic relationships. And so, if you're finding that one of the reasons you're having a little bit trouble thriving is because you are permitting some toxicity in your life, you may want to do a refresher course on season 3. And then season 4 is really going to help you to know where to go from there. Today's episode, we're talking about thriving secrets. Thriving secrets. And so we're allowing Dr. Shante to share some life lessons that she has learned and some things that she has overcome to get out of survival mode and into thriving mode. So here we go. First of all, without further ado, just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to do the work that you do now with life coaching and all of that.
So by day, quote unquote, I am an English professor and it's I thought that was like my dream job. I thought that was my forever job. And I would probably say within 6 months of starting that job, I just got this feeling, this inkling, this calling that was like, no, your platform is going to be bigger than the classroom. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Mm." And didn't understand that at the time. But what I began to notice in social media and other pockets of just mainstream media
Mhm.
is I was uncomfortable with the way that women were being portrayed,
Mhm.
that a lot of things were being projected that were very stereotypical.
Mhm.
And I said, well, the reason why this exists is because the alternatives do not exist, right? And
Yeah.
so why not why not push the alternatives? And so I decided to be the alternative and to try to help other women be the alternative. And what I found in doing that work was that it was a need for it because a lot of people were being entertained, but they weren't being fed. Okay, like they
Mhm.
were being, you know, laughs and jokes and things like that, but in terms of like just real heart issues, real mindset issues, real, mental health issues, those things just were not being addressed in a real, like, meaningful way. And I remember when I first started, trying to branch out and help people, I kind of started to help them with branding and, just trying to get their bearings and trying to make makeovers, photo shoots, headshots, just making sure they were well packaged and presented themselves in these really positive and affirming ways. But what I found in that work is that people were struggling to execute the strategies because they had these, what I call these invisible obstacles
Mhm.
in the background. And I was like, okay, we need to dig into that because so many people think like, well, if you just give me the recipe, then I can just execute the recipe and succeed. But a lot of people have the recipe and are not able to execute because they're battling things like lack of confidence, self-doubt, fear, traumas, triggers. And
Yeah,
so once I began to get into that work, I said, "Oh, okay, we can't even talk about strategies. We have to do some inner work
yeah,
before we can start to manifest the outer work."
absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. You are absolutely right. You cannot skip past that as much as we would all love to. Can't do it. All right. So we have similar things in common with how and why we got into this kind of work. I love that. Tell me, what are some of the biggest life lessons you learned from, I would say, teenage years? Like, if you could, the person you are today, if you could go back, she like, Jesus,
Good
if you could go back
Lord.
and tell that child back there three things, what would you tell her?
Ooh, that's heavy. I was a hot mess, of a teenager. I really was. And I say that I used to see myself as like the rebellious child because I definitely had those rebellious teenage years.
Mhm.
However, what I found was, oh, I'm gonna show you this book.
Okay.
Normally, when teenagers are acting out or kids are acting out, then the normal and natural question is, "What is wrong with you? Like, what is
Mhm.
wrong with this child?" Right? When the better question was what I found in this book, which is, "What happened to you? What happened to this child?
Ooh,
Like, what's
yes.
going on?"
Yeah.
And so, my teenage years were reflective of trauma that I had experienced in childhood, and so a lot of my rebellion and angst was a result of abuse and neglect and growing up in a violent and chaotic household, and so my teenage years were an outgrowth of that. And what I would say in terms of like life lessons, um one of the biggest is that it is far more important to be respected than it is to be liked. And,
Yes.
because when you experience neglect or abandonment in childhood, or, your parents are not emotionally available to you, meaning you got food, clothes, and shelter, but they did not have any emotional capital to contribute, to you, because more times than not, especially if you were born to young parents, and I was born to young parents, I had a teenage mother, right? So they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
Kids are expensive and they are an incessant torrent of need. I need this, I need that. And
Mhm.
so when you are born to a young parent who is barely has a roof over their own head, they tend to lack the emotional capital to give to their children because they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so when you don't get those hugs, or when you don't get that quality time, or you don't get, that nurturing and understanding, then what that can manifest to in later years is you become a people pleaser,
Yeah.
or you feel like you have to audition and perform and please in order to get attention or like or what have you. And I realize down the road that respect is a much more is much more preferable than like, because people's preferences and likes and tastes change,
Yeah.
okay? But respect is not negotiable.
That
Respect means
part.
that I don't have to like, but
Mhm.
I will respect. I will honor who you are. I will validate, your rights, and that is enough, like. And I think that that was one of the biggest um shifts from the teenage years into where I am now, is that respect is definitely more preferable than like.
Mhm.
The second life lesson is that people can't give what they don't have.
Mhm. That is the truth.
And. And. What I mean by that is, oftentimes, we expect people to provide things that they do not have the capacity to give.
Yeah.
And so people spend decades trying to gain someone's love or someone's approval or someone's, friendship, engagement, and or something. And not everybody has those qualities. Not everybody has the capacity to do that. One thing that I learned from this book, which I highly recommend, What Happened to You, right?
Who's the
Is
author
that
on that? I'm trying to see the
so
I
it's
need to have
by
that on my shelf.
Dr. Bruce Perry and
Okay.
Oprah Winfrey. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things that I learned from that book and just the studies of trauma is that trauma leaves gaps.
Yeah.
Okay. So trauma leaves gaps in development, it leaves gaps in understanding, it leaves gaps in emotional benchmarks, like it literally leaves gaps, right? And so a lot of times, depending on, not everybody had the Huxtables as their parents, right? And so a lot of times you're being raised by people who have gaps. And
Mm,
so they don't have those qualities to give you. And yet, as a child, or as a spouse or as a whatever, you're like, where's the love? Where is
yeah,
the
something's missing.
understanding? Where
Yeah.
is you know, so there's a disconnect. And too often people spin their wheels in frustration trying to get things from people that they don't have the capacity to give. And
Yeah.
so, and in times like that, that's where it becomes really important to um, engage in an exercise that I call radical acceptance. Okay. So,
Yeah.
radical acceptance is just this notion that, like, hey, here's what I deserve, here's what I'm worthy of. And this person does not have the capacity. So rather than sit here with my hand open or with my heart open, expecting something that's never going to come, I need to make my peace with that. And I need to heal from that. And I need to move on from that. And I need to find alternatives and different ways to engage rather than um, spending more years in disappointment about qualities and qualities that people cannot give me, that they cannot deposit into my life.
Gotcha.
um did you say 3 lessons?
Yeah.
Okay. And then third lesson is loving yourself sets the standard for how you will be loved by others,
Yes.
and loving
Okay.
yourself sets the standard. And it took me a long time to love myself at a really high level, because a lot of us are taught to do for others first. And
Mhm.
that if we are doing for ourselves, we are selfish, and that our needs need to fall to the back burner, and that we need to, uh, soldier on, and just because when you think about a lot of, especially in the Black community, those qualities of Big Mama and Medea or what have you, you know, she always had a plate for somebody. She always had a cot or a pallet or at least some blankets for somebody, if they needed a place to stay for a few days or a few weeks or a few months.
Mhm.
She always had a couple of dollars in her pocket and she would give you her last. And it's like, and don't get me wrong. I mean, those are those are esteemable qualities, and yet they came at such a tremendous cost
Yeah.
to the individual, and so that whole notion of rest, like I know so many people who cannot rest. They cannot sit still because they were conditioned that if you're not working, you're lazy. If you're
Mm.
not doing something, you're lazy. If I'm up in this house working, you better be in this house working. And so many of them, were raised in this culture of survival mode, and labor, and that the only value you have is in what you do
Yeah.
rather than in who you are. And so self-love is one of those things that in that type of conditioning goes right out the window, and you feel like I have to push through. I have to to persevere. I have to endure, and in some cases, I have to suffer. I have to
Oh.
suffer. You know,
Yeah.
like that is our legacy. And I decided that I didn't want any parts of that. That whole trope of like the strong black woman and
Mhm.
and that whole I was like, no, that hasn't done me any
Mhm.
favors. I said, I don't have any badges. I don't have any more money in the bank. I don't have it like that that whole notion because when you develop that superwoman, superhuman, I got it, I don't need anything or anybody, then people will take you at your word and they will stop checking for you and instead start drawing from you. It's like, oh,
Yes.
okay, well, since you got it, well, since you
Come
got
help
it,
me with
since you
this.
come help me with this. Come help me with that. And can you
Mhm.
do this? And can you do that? And
Mhm.
every time your phone rings, rather than people saying, hey, I'm just checking on you, or hey, I was thinking about you, or hey, I'm just sending some love your way today, it's can you, will you,
Mhm.
I need you to, can you pick up, and that sort of thing. And so self love was it was a radical act. I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm gonna start taking some solo trips and I'm gonna start travel.
Mhm.
I'm gonna luxuriate on myself. I'm gonna start taking some trips around the world by myself. I'm going to start, setting some boundaries and realizing that no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
I'm going to um not tolerate behaviors from certain people and recognize that I deserve the same amount of care, kindness, and attention that I have been conditioned to give to others, that I am equally worthy of that. And that rather than expect somebody to, deposit that into my life, I can deposit that into my own life.
Yeah.
So self love is top tier.
I love it. Those were some amazing lessons, and I heavy on the self-love part because you how you see yourself, whether you know it or not, you are definitely projecting that out and teaching other people how to treat you. So I'm really glad that you included that.
Mm.
Okay, let's talk about thriving in relationships. What have you learned about friendships, sisterhood, and romantic relationships as it pertains to thriving, how to thrive in each of those areas?
In the words of Rob Bass, it take two to make a thing go right. You
Woo!
know,
Yes.
it it really does. Reciprocity is a beautiful thing.
Mm,
And that reciprocity is different than transaction because I want to be careful with that. Like in this day and age, there's a lot of if you don't buy me this and if you don't take me to this type of restaurant, then you're not gonna get the goodies and like that sort of thing. And it's like, I'm like, that sounds, you know, prostitution kind of works the same way. So I'm like,
mhm,
it's a transactional relationship. So I'm like, I definitely don't want to build anything on that foundation. Okay.
mhm,
But reciprocity is a different story. Reciprocity, there's a mutuality that suggests that we are both invested in the quality, the length, the endurance, the engagement within the relationship. Okay. So
yeah,
that it's not always this one-sided deal because I realized at one point in time in my friend group, I was the person that was always like, hey, y'all, who wants to do this? Who
mhm,
wants to do that? How about we do this? How about we do that? And in a moment of reflection, I said, I wonder what would happen if I stopped doing that. Would
mm,
anybody else step up? Would anybody else
yeah,
say anything? So I did stop doing that. And oh, did the crickets chirp? And I said, okay.
wow,
Cool, and because they were so used to me doing the heavy lifting that when I stopped doing the heavy lifting, there was a time where it was like, a deficit, but then eventually it did prompt other people. They were like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I could make suggestions. I guess you could make
Mhm.
suggestions. I guess that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so reciprocity in friendships is the name of the game, and it's not about keeping score, it's not about tit for tat, but it's like, are we both making a concerted effort, okay, to facilitate the longevity and the quality of the relationship? And so, in terms of thriving, reciprocity absolutely has to be there.
Mhm.
Um, Two, intentionality has to be there. So some of my closest friends are friends from college. And child, that was some time ago. We'll just say that was some time
A
ago.
little bit of
And,
time, just a little bit.
just a little bit of time, and then folks then got married, had kids, got married and divorced, like and moved to other states or what have you.
Mhm.
And so when people scatter to the wind like that, or people now have families, that they are obligated to and they are responsible for, friendship is one of those things that can really go by the wayside. And you have to be really intentional.
Yeah.
I read Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, her autobiography, and I believe the term that she used, she says, I'm really aggressive about my friendships because she knows how easy it is for the calendar to fill up. And then next thing you know, 6 months have flown by, a
Yeah.
whole year has flown by. And, so you have to be really intentional about it and be like, hey, when are we getting together or when are we going to talk? And this is protected time because
Mhm.
it's very easy to get kind of swept away in the current of life.
It
And
is. Yeah.
have found is that friendship is actually it actually is one of the components that helps you heal. So back to this book, what happened to you?
Mhm.
Realized we were going to be referencing this much today. But I will be the first to say therapy doesn't work for everybody. And I'm a strong advocate of therapy. I'm a strong advocate of therapy, of counseling, of coaching, of all the things. But some people do not have the bandwidth or the articulation to be able to just verbalize and talk
Yeah.
about the things that happen without re-traumatizing themselves in some
Yes.
instances. And so one of the best alternatives is friendship and community, okay? Because relational hunger, okay, is a real thing in the United States. There really is a loneliness epidemic in this
Yeah.
country. And so being able to just be surrounded by people who pour into you. There's this really great documentary on Netflix right now. It's a docu-series called The Blue Zones. And
Mm.
it's about these pockets, communities of people who have lived to over 100 years, over 100 years old. So you just got all these little old people that are living these very long lives. And so this man sought out to find out, like, how are y'all living so long? Like, what is
Mm.
the secret? What is the key to long life? Is it the fountain of youth? Like, what is going on? And one of the things that he found is community. The United States is this very kind of like rugged individualism, westernized solo dolo, that
Yes.
type of thing. And that is so different than the rest of the world. This is why I really encourage people to travel. I said, please get us out of the United States and see how other communities and countries live, because in other countries, people are very communal. They're
Yeah.
like, no, this is family. And that's how people are sustaining life, is because they're like, we show up for one another, we depend on one another, we have tea with one another, we share meals with one another, we pray for one another, like we are community. And
Yeah.
so I would say in friendship, reciprocity, intentionality, and a sense of community, that that we are here for one another, that you are not struggling by yourself or suffering in silence.
Mhm.
In love relationships, I have found that one of the healthiest gifts that you can give, or the best gift that you can give to your partner, is the best version of yourself.
Yes.
Mm.
I agree with that 100%.
I, because if you you carry yourself with you everywhere you go. You can't get away from yourself, right? And, so if you think about all the people who go through things and then just kind of sweep them under the rug,
Mhm.
or just try to stuff it in the closet and what have you, what people do not realize, here is the dirty little secret about relationships, honey. Relationships are revelatory. Everything that you have not dealt with in your life will come to the surface in relationship, because that is the nature of relationships. When people say, marriage changes people, I say, oh, it does not. It reveals people. It shows
Yeah.
you who you really are.
Mhm.
Because through the dynamic of love and interaction with that person, it goes straight to all of the issues of your heart. And so, what's in your heart? What is not resolved? What is,
Mhm.
what's there? And so I truly believe that in order for you to have a healthy, happy, thriving relationship, that you should always be working on yourself so that your partner does not have to shoulder the load
Mhm.
of all of the things, or suffer the consequences, quite frankly, of all the things that you have not dealt with. And it's like, because here's the thing about, and I'm not throwing shade at those who wanna secure the bag. I mean, go ahead, girl, get the bag, get the bird, okay, secure the bag. But the thing is, if, you got the white boy on your roster and he feeding you pasta and lobster and he giving you the fucking bags and all of that, okay, if he's doing all of that
What are you
and
doing?
is not a man of integrity,
Mm. That too.
you still happy, sis? Like if you got, I guess you decided, well, instead of crying in the hoopty, I'm gonna cry in the G wagon. Okay, well, you still crying, like you still dealing with some shuck and jive, or if he's a liar, if he is a poor communicator, if he's verbally abusive, and you talking about pasta and lobster, it's like
Mhm.
that's not sufficient. That's not sustainable. Okay.
Right.
So if you talk thriving in relationships, people really need to do work on themselves,
Mhm.
and um people need to trust their intuition, meaning too often in relationships, people will overlook red flags and they try
Mm.
to rationalize and justify and be like, well, maybe if I squint my eye a little bit, if I, take a step, add a little paprika, then maybe, just maybe, I this will be a salvageable type of thing,
And
but
mm-mm.
mm, I have learned, I am a big fan. I am a big fan of what I call bless and release,
Mm.
meaning it's like the benediction at church. May the Lord God bless you real good. Mwah, 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 mwah. There's some lovely parting gifts on the way out of the door, but
Mm.
this is not it. Because too often we allow people to occupy time and space and resources knowing that it's not going to work out, and also I would probably say, in terms of thriving, communication, and I know that sounds really cliche, but if you are in a relationship with somebody that you feel like you cannot talk to about hard things, that is a flag. That is a
Yeah.
clue. That
That's
is an
not even a
indicator.
relationship. I don't even know what to call it. Cause like, yeah, that doesn't work.
And it goes back to that earlier point about, the people pleasing and the fawning. Well, I don't
Mhm.
want to say anything because I don't want to rock the boat. And I don't want to say anything because I want you to like me. And I don't want to say, look, love is not a performance.
Yeah.
Love is not a performance. Okay. And so healthy connections are generated between people when somebody loves you and appreciates you for who you are, not just for what you're doing, even though, and I'm an acts of service girly. Like,
Mhm.
if you brush the snow off my car, yeah, baby, like I'm gonna fix you some grits and bacon, like that. Thank you very much, sir. So I'm all about acts of service. However, if the only things that you like about me are the things that I do for you
Yeah.
rather than who I am,
Mhm.
and too often we shield if we have, anxiety about being abandoned or neglected or left or what have you, too often we won't even show who we really are because we're so busy just trying to keep the peace and keep the person and what have you. And that's too much work. That
Yeah.
is way too much work. And so, yeah, make sure that you are working on yourself and your issues so that your partner doesn't have to pay for crimes that they didn't commit.
Love it. Love it. I've actually found those lessons that you said about relationships, I found those things to be true in parenting as well, in terms of the best gift I can give my children is showing up as my best self. And so
Mhm.
now I am 42 years young. I
Yay.
have friends, yay. I have friends who have kids who are in college or like they're like on the cusp of empty nester. And I'm just sitting here with a whole, see, yes. And then here I go with a 7-year old and two 3-year olds. Like, child, oh my god, it's potty training and it's, all the things, and I'm just like,
Lego blocks.
man, just picking up toys, and I joke and I go, "I'm too old for this. I should have had y'all 10 years ago," or I should have had y'all as soon as me and Rodney got married. We got married at 28. Like, I should have had y'all right then. Jesus.
Y'all had a good long marriage. Y'all had a good long run.
We did. Like, we'll be 15 years old in 2024.
I love
And
that.
yeah, we didn't have our first child till 2016 and we got married in 2009. And so, there's pros and cons to being a old mama. I'm an old mama. Okay. My
Mhm.
parents were old parents also. And, the cons in terms of from a kid perspective, you can't get away with nothing, because Jesus,
Nothing.
old parents hit different. But then it's also, I know so much more now. Like, I think
Mhm.
about if that would have played out in my mind, like if I would have had those kids back before I hit 30 or in my early 30s. And I
Mhm.
wasn't bad then, I had some good things going, but there was still a lot about myself I was learning. And
Yes.
parenting now from a perspective of knowing those things has been it's been a great gift. It's been
That
something
wisdom
that's
is tremendous.
it is.
That
It's needed.
by the time you hit 40, you have you are not the same person you were in your 20s. You
No.
have such a depth of perspective and experience. You have usually set the appropriate boundaries. You have gained some clarity about what works for your life and what doesn't work for your
Mhm.
life. And yeah, being able to have that type of wisdom, not to mention, usually, your money is different in your
Yeah.
40s than it is when you're in your 20s. And so, yeah, there are a lot of benefits from having children at an older age. My only thing was the way my energy is set up, the way my needs set up, meow. I don't know that
Child,
I
and
could do.
that's the con part. I'm like, "Father, help me. What have I done? Why are they running so fast?"
But I will tell you this, it moves quickly. It really
Yeah.
does move quickly. There were sometimes how your social media or your photos will say, "Hey, this happened 6 years ago," or "This
Mhm.
happened 5 years ago." And I'd be like, "Dang, 5 years ago this kid was in middle school and now she about to graduate high school." And I mean, it really does happen in a flash. And so, the good news is that you have a good partner, and parenting is one of those things, it just like marriage, it reveals you. Okay, like I feel like money, motherhood, and marriage will reveal you like nothing else will, because if you have some unresolved issues, they will come out in the marriage, they will come out in your mothering, and they will come out in the way you spend your money. Like it just will.
Yeah.
But fortunately you have a good rock solid partner, you have wisdom that a lot of young moms don't have. And so things that a lot of when you're having children when you're younger that you would kind of be spazzing out about, you're just like, peace be still. We're good with that. I'm in a different place. I'm in a different chapter.
Mhm. You talked about 40s, and so we have to touch on thriving in aging because these 40s, let me tell you something. I love the wisdom, I love all of that, but I don't okay.
The way my metabolism is set up in my 40s,
What
baby, like,
metabolism? That's what I was about to say. Like, what my metabolism did not slow down, okay? My metabolism quit.
I felt the same way. Let me tell
Yeah,
you, I have a book, that I wrote specifically about this process called Aging Backwards because I hit the same wall. I thought my metabolism had died. I
yeah.
was like, because and it's not that I wasn't working out, I was, but whatever I was doing in my 30s just was
It
not
just
working in the
mm-mm.
40s.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I know, people experience excessive losses in the pandemic, but the pandemic in a lot of ways ended up being a gift to me because I finally was able to sit down and figure out what was happening with my body because even though I felt young, even though I felt spry, even though I looked like the black did not crack, on the inside, my body was like, "Okay, baby, we get ready for the old lady gang." So perimenopause it wasn't even a word in my vocabulary. I was like, "Who? Pe- What?" You
mhm,
know, I've always heard about menopause, but I didn't know what perimenopause was. And that's when I found out how your estrogen levels are dropping off a cliff and how
yeah,
that causes stress in the body, which stress is cortisol, releases stress, and it goes straight to the belly and all the things. And I was like, what? So once I found that out, I started a regimen of hormone supplements, thank you, Amazon, reading reviews, trying to figure it out. And then I hired a trainer for like strength training because here's what I did not realize is that when you are in your 40s as a woman, your muscle mass declines like
mhm,
nobody's business. It declines rapidly. And so I wasn't doing strength training. When I worked out, I was doing cardio and,
yeah,
doing walks outside or what have you. But no, I needed resistance training and I didn't know that. And
yeah,
so thriving in your 40s, I never thought that I would be the kind of person where going to the gym on a regular basis or lifting weights on a regular basis will be my lifestyle.
yeah,
But it absolutely is, so thriving in your 40s is because trust me, if I was doing these types of workouts in my 30s and 20s, girl, I would have a rap album. I would be on tour. I would be listen, okay, you talk about securing the bag, okay, like my body
listen,
would hang it, okay, but because it's happening in my 40s, I'm like, we're literally fighting gravity, and
mhm,
so part of thriving and aging is having a really clear understanding of what's happening on the inside because all we can do is assess the outer. But it's like, what is happening with my metabolism? What is happening with my thyroid? What is going on? What story is the blood telling? Okay. And
yeah,
then from there, you know, um doing a regimen so that you can not only just manage weight, but just manage health.
yeah,
Because that's another thing too. That's one of the big misconceptions is that just because you are thin does not mean you are healthy.
yeah,
Okay. And a lot of people, what we consider malnutrition, we always assume that it's somebody who's not eating or hasn't been fed. It's like, no, malnutrition means poor nutrition. Okay.
yeah,
So a lot of times what you're feeding your body just does not fuel. And then the big secret that I learned is, and this I learned through my trainer, I didn't realize I didn't eat meals. I
really?
I grazed. I grazed. I was a
Mm,
grazer. I was a snacker. And I was, oh, I eat some nuts here. Oh, I'll a rice cake there, like I was that sort of thing.
mhm,
In order for me to build the kind of muscle, and basically replace muscle with fat and what have you, I needed like somewhere between 120 and 150 grams of protein every day. I
wow,
wasn't even getting, yeah, I wasn't even getting close to that,
Yeah.
and then when I 'cause, when you write down, like, "What did I eat today?" and you start counting up the macros and be like, "Dang, it was mostly carbs,"
Yeah.
so I was just doing this very carb heavy, even fruits and vegetables are carbs,
Yeah.
and I just didn't realize that I really wasn't prioritizing protein. So once I started prioritizing protein, doing resistance training so that I could build muscle, and then this was the other thing too, because girl, um, perimenopause and the cortisol and the estrogen dropping and what have you, it will rob you of your sleep. There was a
Mm.
time where I would go to bed at regular time, 10, 10:30, but as sure as my name is Shante at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like,
Just wide awake.
just wide awake, for no reason. And so I started taking magnesium glycinate, in order to help regulate my sleep because it was all hormonal. And I was like, so I will tell you this for, the women listening that I was like, hold on, I need to understand what's happening in my body. There's this really great book called Hormonal Intelligence. So if you guys
Ooh.
are paying attention or
Okay.
writing this down, let me pull it out of my trusty Audible library. It is called Hormonal Intelligence
Okay.
by Dr. Aviva, Aviva Rom, Romm. And it was
Okay.
a game changer. So part of thriving in aging is understanding what's happening with your body, but also too recognizing that people used to say, 40s was over the hill. I
Mhm.
love this decade.
Yes.
Ooh, I love this decade. I'm like, babe,
It's
I'm
the
just
best
getting
of both worlds kinda
it
decade.
really
Yeah.
is. It's the
Yeah.
best of both worlds. You have the wisdom of a woman in her 40s, but you still have the vitality and the energy of
Mhm.
someone much younger. Your money is better, so you can do more things and you can go outside and play games and that sort of thing. So it is really about embracing that, but also too there's something to be said about loving yourself where you are.
Mhm.
So here's the thing. Every woman, everybody has a pair of pants, jeans, a dress in their closet. It's like, but I'm not going to throw it out. I'm not going to give it away because I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to get back to that. Right.
Mhm.
Um, and I have learned how important it is to live in the present, to live in the body you have, to
Yeah.
live in the chapter that you're in, because living looking back, living reaching back like
Yeah.
that, the present is what is here,
Yeah.
okay? Or the I'm aware this one day, okay, well now you're reaching towards the future, which is there's nothing wrong with planning for the future, but the future is not here and you may not get there. So it's right here and right now is what counts.
Yeah.
And so being able to love yourself where you are is one of the keys to thriving and not allowing where you are or what your body looks like to keep you from going places, doing things. It's like go out there and really truly do live your best life because I know too many people um, they that famous book, The Five Regrets of Dying People. Number one
Yeah.
regret of dying people was one, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life that was true to myself rather
Mhm.
than what others expected. So in other words, I didn't do what I wanted to do. I lived to please other people. And number two was I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And
Yeah.
so like I know too many people that are like, well, when I retire, or when the kids get older, or what you're borrowing time that you think you're going to have, and too often you don't have it, and you wish that you would have just um
Yeah.
done those things in the moment when you had those moments to do them.
Mhm. Good stuff. Girl, you just help me because, child, I actually have a doctor's appointment next month to go get some blood work done to figure out what in the French toast is going on with my doggone hormones.
Hormones.
Why has my
Yeah.
metabolism quit? Why did I go from, because, girl, after I had the twins, I was on this like, you might have remember seeing it back then. I was on this super fitness kick, especially since there was a
Mhm.
pandemic going on. Like I had the girls literally got to have an emergency C-section right as lockdown started. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
just dealing with postpartum. Had severe preeclampsia and post-eclampsia, which I didn't even know was a thing. For like
Oh my
3
god.
months after I had them, my blood pressure was still doing the percolator, so I was just like, "I'm about to get fit." And because 'cause I'm not finna be on this, I had the little pill bottles Sunday, Monday, like the old people have, and I was like, "Oh, this ain't cute. I'm about to get this weight off." And so since I think I hyper focused on fit, and I know I did, because we couldn't go anywhere. It was just like, I don't have any control over anything, but I can control this one thing. And so I
Mhm,
went hard at it, lost all this weight. And then I would say like late summer of 21, it started kind
mhm.
of slowly creeping back on. And I was like, okay, I'm not really worried. And then I just looked up and I had gained back all the weight that I lost with a few extra friends. Like,
Thanks, your
I was
friends.
like, what just happened?
It's like it came back with interest.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
I between the hormones and the fitness routine, I was like, okay, this and I had to commit, and that was the hardest part.
mhm.
It was the lifestyle change. So a book that really helped me with that, really famous book, it's called Atomic Habits.
Okay,
It
yeah, I've heard of that
it
one.
shifted my thinking from what I used to think, which is like, I want to lose 50 pounds and set this goal versus no, what does a healthy person do? What does a healthy person eat? How does a healthy person spend their morning? And
Yeah,
so it was less about what I wanted to do and became more about who I wanted to be.
yeah,
And I became a different person, which has really been a much more sustainable path because I definitely came from the era of gain 10 pounds, I mean, lose 10 pounds and gain it right back, lose 20 pounds and gain it right back, like, and
yeah.
so that whole back and forth yo-yo,
Mhm.
I found that becoming a healthy person through the habits, really has been a more sustainable path for
Yeah.
wellness in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with that. And I also love what you said about appreciating where you are now. Even as you have goals to get smaller or do the thing, you still have to deal with where you are now. I can say, as a full figured woman,
Mhm,
that there has been all this talk about, the plus size fashion movement, and these people who are critics of it saying, well, I just don't like it, it's glorifying obesity. And it's just like, okay,
mhm.
but you don't tell skinny or thin people that they're glorifying anorexia. Like, why are you, what is, what is
Yeah,
wrong
like,
with people encouraging
this
people to love
society,
where they're at right now?
I love the body positivity movement because this country is very fat phobic,
It
and
is
it's like,
very much so.
and it's almost like it's a stigma, and there's so many pockets of society that are just so incredibly insensitive, and it's like society saying, "Oh, you don't get to love yourself."
Mhm.
And I love that the body positivity movement is like, "Screw you. Yes, I do. I do get
Yeah,
to love myself and my curves and my like, you're not going to hinder me from doing that. And if somebody wants to change their body or wants, to get healthy or fit or fit into smaller clothes or whatever, so be it. But it doesn't mean that they're not worthy of love where they are. And so I
absolutely.
love body positivity, and that movement. I don't think it glorifies obesity. I think it is a radical act of self-love and
Mhm.
acceptance. One that a lot of people, back to my earlier point, people can't give what they don't have. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't love themselves, and people tend to judge others in the areas that they have the most shame about. And
Ooh,
so,
yes.
um, that's a whole other can of worms. But yes, I support you on your journey, sis.
Thank you.
Definitely. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Believe you me, I too thought that my metabolism had died, and come to find out, it's all about the hormones.
Mm. I'm excited. I'm gonna have to do a follow-up episode on how my blood work went. Like, since
Yes.
I know so many people, so many friends of mine that are going through the same thing. I'm like, girl, you too. Like, I don't know, like, because I used to be fitness instructor, Zumba classes, always moving and shaking, and
Mhm.
I am now at the heaviest weight I have ever been in my entire adult life. I ain't never seen these numbers on the scale before. Like, who is this person? And the things you did before not working now, but I mean, it's all so if you all are out there and you're listening, just know you're not by yourself. We done
Mm-mm.
been through it and currently going through it, and it's a reason for it. Go to your doctor, get your hormones checked out, and don't suffer in silence. Don't just
Mhm.
accept your fate and let the wagon roll over you because you got to get your health together. I feel like doing that
Exactly.
sometimes, just forget it. Girl, like
Like,
last week I said I was gonna get my mind right. I had my exercise, I'm gonna get on top of it. Girl, let me tell you, I threw my back all the way out. All the way out. Was on the floor writhing in pain, like
girl,
couldn't stand up, couldn't sit down, literally stayed awake from 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday to like 10:30 PM on Sunday
oh
in
my
back
goodness.
pain. Like, I'm finna go to the emergency room. And I did a simple cardio workout at home and did a back row with no weights in my hands, just doing a back row to the beat of the music. And couldn't do nothing for 3 days. Literally just happened to me. I was literally about to go to the emergency room, spend all this thousands of dollars. I happened to text my doctor, who's a naturopath, and he was like, take some magnesium. I was like, okay. So Rodney took me to the doctor, got my magnesium. And then I was trying to describe to Rodney what it felt like. I said, imagine the worst Charlie horse you ever had in your life, but it's in the middle of your back. And he was like, dang, ouch. I'm like, yeah. And then I was like thinking, when I used to have Charlie horse when I was a cheerleader in my, they used to tell me, go to the cafeteria and eat a banana. And I was like, I wonder.
Fascinating.
We had all these bananas. I just went and got a banana, ate one. 20 minutes later, gone.
I'm telling you, like, we so that's a whole other episode about,
It
like, the
is.
culture diet, but, like, it's so devoid of nutrients, like, I had to learn how to shop the perimeter of the grocery store because
Mhm.
once you start getting to the middle aisles, everything is processed
Yep.
and you just don't get the vitamins,
No.
we are lacking in potassium, lacking in magnesium, lacking in vitamin D. You're just like, dang, and so trust me, there is a path out. I am rooting for you because believe you me, like we can eat ourselves back into wellness. It
Yeah.
really does come down to just, um diet, not from the perspective of like just straight up food, but like it's the nutrients in the food
Yes.
that fuel
Yes.
us and help functioning.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, you guys, I this has gone so just as wonderful as I planned. We've talked about relationships, we talked about health, we talked about life lessons, and the hour is spent so quickly. But before we let go of Dr. Shante, I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. Tell us what you got going on. What do you have coming up? I know you've been talking about thriving on your outlets
Yep.
as well, and tell us how we can connect with you.
So you can follow me on any social media platform at Dr. Shante Says, which is
Mhm.
Dr. Shante Shante Says Says. And primarily you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. You can also in if you go to those social media platforms and you click the link in my bio, you will find a couple of upcoming things that I'm excited about. One of them is a wellness journal. So for the start of the new year, just kind of 52 weeks of wellness where you can just kind of journal through some of your issues and things that you want to work on and heal within yourself.
Mhm.
And then also uh, expand and thrive. That's really kind of like my theme for next year is
Yeah.
expanding and thriving. And so being a better version of yourself and living a more expansive life that's bigger than just going to work and going home and taking care of other people. And that cohort will be launching very shortly. And so we have a kickoff event in November, but you can learn about that by going to Dr. Shante Says on Instagram or TikTok, clicking on that link, and you will find all about it.
Awesome. 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 I will be sure to check that out. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being on our show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope that what we've said has blessed you. Please catch up with all the things Dr. Shante said. And so make sure also that you guys go back and jot down, if you didn't, as we were talking, those books that she gave
Mhm.
us. A lot of good nuggets there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep living victoriously.